The young boy lay in the hospital bed with his foot injured and full of gangrene. The doctor told him he was going to have to amputate part of his leg or he would die. What could God possibly do to save this young man's foot? You'll find out next on this episode of Stories of Faith. Hello and welcome to this episode of Stories of Faith. Saidi Rodriguez usually joins me via video link, but unfortunately she couldn't join me today. But she did send in a short video clip that I'm going to share with you later in the program. First, I'd like to share our Bible text of the day. It's found in Psalms 37, and it says, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand." Today's program is about how God leads us in this life in sometimes quite miraculous ways. Recently, one of our church members passed, and I had a chance to go over some of the stories of his life. And I thought you'd like to hear a few of them, the miraculous ways that God led him in his life. His name was Dr. Frank Hurd, and he and his wife Rosalie have been friends of Better Life for years. Some of you may know Rosalie because of the popular vegetarian cookbook she wrote, entitled 10 Talents. Well, Dr. Hurd was a physician who wanted to work with God to help heal people. In fact, in his office, he had two signs. One sign said, "God is the healer," and the other sign said, "I am his helper." We interviewed Dr. Hurd back in 2016, and I'd like to play a portion of that interview where he shared some of the miraculous things that God did for him in his life, including an amazing visit from an angel. Let's start with Dr. Hurd sharing how as a young 6-year-old, God taught him not to swear. The story begins with him playing at a neighbor's house when the Christian lady of the home overheard him swearing around her young daughter. Well, she didn't like that, so she told him, "You need to go home." But on the way home, he stopped and wondered, what's wrong with swearing? Everybody I know swears. So he turned around and went to ask her what the problem was. As the lady listened to his question, she realized he doesn't have a clue as to what's wrong with swearing. So she decided that she needed to introduce him to something called the 10 Commandments. Just listen to what happened next.
So she pulled a Bible off the shelf. And he said, "You ever seen this book?" I said, "What book is that?" She said, "It's the Bible." "Yeah," I said, "I know we have one because we have births and deaths and marriages in the center, and I've never read it, but I know we have one." So she turned over to Exodus 20 and read the 10 Commandments. Then she went back and labored on the third and says, "Don't take the name of the Lord." And she said, "No, that means you don't swear." Oh, so I'm sitting in a little folded metal chair, and I'm listening to this, and all of a sudden she says, "You know, and there's one thing for sure, you got to remember, young man, that God," I said, "God, well, where is God anyway? Who is God, Oh, you won't see him. He's way out in the cloud someplace. You won't see him. But he actually came down to the earth, and he wrote with his own finger in stone these commandments I'm reading to you." I thought, wow, wrote it with his own finger in stone. She's not going to change. I said that. And so when she said that, it's like a little 6-volt current kind of went through my body, and I was sitting in this chair. Well, there's no electricity in the cabin. I thought, well, that's strange. So I said, "Okay, that's all there is to swearing." She said, "That's it." Okay, so I thanked her and I went home. And I said, "I've just made a big discovery today." She says, "You're always making discoveries." I said, "Well, that's true, but this one is a little different." And I said, "I learned that we shouldn't be swearing." And so Mother said, "Now listen here, I don't want to hear anything about any of this kind of stuff." She said, "This goody-goody stuff, I don't want to hear it. Just don't talk to me about it." So for 4 years, living in a home where everybody's swearing and I'm not swearing, you get to be kind of known that you're different.
Well, what do you think about that? He got a little shock as she was telling him about the 10 Commandments. It seems that God wanted him to pay attention. But then you have Frank's mother, who doesn't appreciate all this goody-goody talk. She thinks that swearing is just fine for her and the family. You know, it was things like this that would continue to put Frank at odds with his family as time progressed. But that wasn't Frank's last encounter with the Ten Commandments. When he was about 10 years old, he found himself picking berries for a local farmer, when something very similar happened again. This story happened one Friday afternoon, when the farmer that he was working for told him, "You don't need to come back the next day." Well, Frank wondered, "Don't you like my work?" But that wasn't it. Just listen to this.
So it came Friday, we worked during the week, and came Friday night, and he said, "Well, you don't have to come back tomorrow." So I thought the way he said it, "Oh, you don't like our work?" Or what? No, we like your work. You're doing a very good job, no problem with that. But I said, "Well, what's happening tomorrow?" He said, "Well, we're going to church tomorrow." I said, "We got a wedding or a funeral or what's going on?" "No," he said, "as a matter of fact, we go to church every Saturday." I said, "Well, is that part of your religion?" Yes. I said, "Well, what religion is that?" He said, "Well, he's Seventh-day Adventist." Well, I'd never heard of Seventh-day Adventist before. I said, "Okay." So I went up and sat on the porch, and they brought the Bible out, and they read the Ten Commandments to me again at this time. But this time I was sitting in the soft chair. There was no electricity. You know, they had electric fence, but it wasn't hooked up to my chair, see. So when they read the commandments and they came back on the fourth one, the same thing happened that I experienced when I was 6 years old. This chair had a little 6-volt thing going through the chair. And I thought, well, boy, this is really important. I have to keep the Sabbath now, the Saturday, and that'll be the death knell to my parents and my relationship, because as it is right now, we were pretty stressed out with everything I was wanting to do and learn, and they were just against everything. So when I said, "Okay, do you have any information about people that don't agree with this?" Oh, yes. So they had a book called The Seventh Day, and so I said, "Okay." I took all this stuff home that night. I stayed up to about 2 in the morning, read the book, read all the literature, and I had a few questions for my father the next morning. Well, he was all upset and angry that I'd even thought about it, and he said, "We're just going to have to beat that out of your head, because we're not having anything like that around here anymore. I don't hear talk about it, nothing." I said, "Well, you don't understand. It's not a matter of beating it out of my head. I have come from a lot of study, and I've come to the conclusion that this is the right thing to do, and I think I'm going to pursue that."
Wow, so twice in his life, he got a little shocked when somebody was impressing him with the importance of the Ten Commandments. That's very interesting. Well, once again, he shared what he was learning at home, and it just got him into trouble. The sad part was that this led to him leaving home at 10 years old to go and live with the Adventist family that he had been working for. But in the end, it worked out, because Frank really was much more comfortable in a Christian environment. But that's not the last time Frank would feel a shock. Wait till you hear what happened to him when he was 14 years old and an angel shows up. We'll get to that story and more right after this short break.
Better Life Broadcasting is a viewer-supported Christian media ministry that offers streaming programming via apps on various devices. Please visit blbn.org to support Better Life or to get more information. And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello and welcome back to Stories of Faith. I've been sharing some stories from the life of Dr. Frank Hurd, and coming up next, we're going to be hearing about the dramatic story of when, as a young boy of 14, he was in an accident that left him with 17 fractures in his leg. But first, I'd like to share something with you that's, well, it's actually an encouragement from the Lord. Recently, I was walking through the Owen Rose Garden in Eugene, Oregon, and I came across some beautiful roses, and I'd like to share some photos with you right now. As you can see, God is truly the master artist when it comes to the awesome beauty we find in nature. In each section, there was a small plaque with the name of the rose variety on it. One rose, for example, was called Sparkle and Shine, and another was called Opening Night, and there was even one called Arctic Blue. You know, roses in particular teach us a lesson. Even though we're in this sinful world, and there are dangers and trials for us to bear, God brightens our lives with things like roses. God covers the thorny rose bushes with beautiful flowers. Remember, friends, when you're going through hard times, look for the roses, the bright spots that God places along our path to encourage us to press forward to the end. And when you finally enter the kingdom of heaven, you'll find that there are no more thorns, no pain, no suffering, just many, many good things. All of the wonderful blessings of God. Now, before we get to our angel story, I'd like to share that video clip that Sayudi sent in. Something beautiful recently happened to one of her church members, and she wanted to share it with you. Let's watch.
Hello, friends. Greetings from Mississippi. I am so sorry that I'm not able to be there with you today, but I did want to share a small story. It's a story about a lady from one of our churches. Her name is Mary. And I've talked about Mary before, but Mary is a lady that loves the Lord. She came to know about God, accepted His truth, and has been taking Bible studies with my husband. Mary loves the Lord with all her heart. Mary is blind. She's not able to see, but she just loves God with all her heart. It's just beautiful. Anyway, it got to the point that she told my husband, I feel like I'm ready. I really want to get baptized. She's been desiring this for the longest time. And so we decided to get together because it's the small church. There's no baptistry there. So we had to do the baptism in one of the ladies at our church has a swimming pool. So we went to her house. And before we got to her house, I need to tell you that Mary's husband is a non-believer. He doesn't believe. He's coming to church, but he's not where Mary's at. And so he's very supportive. Oh, this man, the way he loves his wife and supports her and takes good care of her is just wonderful. So the day came when Mary was going to get baptized. And in the morning, the husband woke up and he went outside to do something. And as he was outside, guess what happened? There was a snake. And the snake went after him. And his poor hand, oh, it was so painful. But he decided, you know what? No matter what happens, I'm going to be supporting my wife today. She's getting baptized. She wants this. So no matter what, he put something around his arm, his hand, and he decided, I'm taking my wife to church today. Well, he still wanted to go on a run because he likes running. And so he went outside and he started his run and he was running when all of a sudden he heard something behind and he turns around. You would not believe it. Another snake, a snake following him. So he started running faster and thought to himself, you know what? There's somebody that doesn't want this to happen. But no, I'm taking my wife to get baptized. And he did. He brought her to church. Now we went to the swimming pool after church service and everybody was so excited. It was super hot. Oh, it's hot and humid over here. But it was one of those days. And it was really hot. And everybody was kind of close to where there was a shade. And Mary and my husband were there in the swimming pool. And Mary had a prayer request for God that she didn't tell anybody. And when my husband decided, when he made the prayer and everything, and then in the name of Jesus, she went down to the waters. Would you know that at that very moment, there was this beautiful breeze that everybody felt suddenly. I mean, there was no air, no wind right before. It was just at that perfect moment when she came up that the breeze just came over to everybody. Everybody felt like, oh, that felt so nice. Like if we got baptized with her. And Mary praised the Lord right after getting baptized because she said, God answered my prayer. She had asked that she would be able to, because she's not able to see, that she would be able to tell somehow that God was there, that the presence of His Holy Spirit was there. And she said, I believe with all my heart that breeze was the Holy Spirit. Isn't that beautiful? God answers our prayers. May God bless you, and I'll see you soon.
That sounds like a wonderful baptism. May God bless that dear sister and her husband. And please, no more snakes. Now, in the first part of this program, we shared a couple of stories of when Dr. Frank Hurd was a young boy and he was learning about the Ten Commandments, but now I'd like to share another story. This one happened when he was 14 years old, and this time he was involved in a very serious life-altering accident that left him with 17 fractures. It happened when he was transporting some logs. Here's what happened in Frank's own words.
Well, I came along till I was 14 years old, and we were out in the woods doing some logging, cutting some wood, and we hauled the logs back on a horse-drawn wagon, team of horses. And in November, it was getting kind of cold in New York, so I was getting off the wagon and getting on the wagon different times to keep warm, running behind the horses. Well, at this particular time, I was getting on the wagon, and a fellow who had inebriated ran into the back of the wagon, and I was getting on the wagon. So I got caught between the car and the log rig. And I got sewn up on the rig and then fell off into the road, and had 17 fractures in both legs. This leg, my right leg, was up over my shoulder, and I was just all broken up. So it was on a Sunday, and so I laid in the road, and they wanted me to get a pill. I said, no, keep my head down because I don't want to lose my brain, you know. And I had read considerable, so I knew a few things to do. Couldn't get an ambulance, so it was over between an hour and a half and 2 hours I laid in the road. And so finally I suggested, you know, this is an undertaker just over here a couple of blocks. Why don't you call him? I don't care if I go to the hospital in a hearse. It's okay with me. So they called him, came over and rushed me off to the hospital. And I got there and they worked on me three and a half hours in emergency and another 3.5 hours in surgery. And I woke up 7 days later with tubes and a body cast. And so everything went along. I felt like it was a pincushion because I got shots of some kind every 4 hours. And of course I was stuck in a cast, you can't move. And when I went in there, I was pretty strong because they'd have to change your bedding and everything, and I'd just take a bar and pull myself up because I weighed 145 pounds, 9.5 tall, but I was all muscle. I was on the farm, you know, pretty strong. And so I went along about 3 weeks, and the doctor came in on a Monday morning, and he said, we're going to check your feet, see what they're doing. So they checked my left foot, my right foot, and the left foot was gangrene. Totally black, was dead, and they said, we're going to have to come in Wednesday, take you up to surgery, you're going to lose your left leg. See? Couldn't feel anything. They put the pinwheel on it and everything. So I thought, well, I really wasn't planning on losing my leg in this whole thing. He said, well, you have a choice. You can lose your life or lose your leg, which is whatever you want to do. He said, I'm going to schedule you for Wednesday morning surgery. So I called, as soon as he left, I called the nurse and had her call the family I lived with, and if they could have prayer meeting on Tuesday night instead of Wednesday night, and make my situation a matter of prayer, and if the Lord, you know, see fit to heal me or whatever. I went to sleep that night, resolved that He could heal me. I knew that, but if He didn't, then I would be happy to lose my leg. See. So about 12 o'clock, everything is dark in the room, and of course I'm sound asleep, and I get this shock in my foot like it's a 220 volt, really lit me up, and I woke up, and here at the foot of the bed is this angel standing there looking at me, and the room was brighter than ever had been before. It was just extremely bright, and I could hardly, you know, handle the brightness, and he had long golden locks down to his shoulders, wing buds stuck up over his shoulders, and he's pretty much, there was about an 8-foot ceiling there, and he was up there pretty high. I mean, he's pretty tall. Yeah. And when he bowed and went down, he had to bow out to go out the door, so he was taller than the door, see? And a very, very beautiful smile on his face, and he said, Frank, your foot is going to be all right. Well, I didn't know whether my foot looked perfect. I couldn't see my foot because I'm in a body cast. I can only see 3 feet above my feet. Can't see what's happening, see? So I'm kind of speechless because it's an awesome experience to talk to an angel. So I said to him, I said, did you come to me because of our prayers, or were you sent to me? He said, I was sent to you. So there's a text that says, he would be sent before they even call, he's sent. And I thought, well, that really I know, it settled my confidence in who he was. And I asked him if he had a name. He said, yes, I do, but it's not for you to know it yet. I said, okay. Well, I couldn't think of anything else to say, and he didn't say anything more to me. And we looked at each other it wasn't that long, but it seemed like quite a while. And he smiled and turned and bent down, went out the door, and the room was dark again. See? And I wasn't tired for 3 whole days. I didn't have to sleep for 2 nights. I never went to sleep. From that experience, I was awake for 3 days. All kinds of energy. See? So, surgeon came in Wednesday morning and he said, well, let's check your foot again. And he looked, put the pinwheel on it, and he said, wait a minute, there's something happening here. I said, what happened? He said, well, can you feel anything? I said, yeah, I can feel my little toe and the outside of my foot, but that's all I can feel. The rest of it, I can't feel anything. He said, well, that's just the whole thing. He said, your little toe is pink, and the side of your foot is pink, normal. He said, that would be totally abnormal if you think about the circulation to the foot, which is true, see? The big toe would be pink first, but in this case, the little toe was pink. That's because the anastomosis of the vessels are in the little toe from the circulation of your foot. So he said, I've been here for about 30 years. I retired, and they called me back on your case because you had so many fractures, see? So he said, are you a Christian? I said, yes. He said, well, did something unusual happen here? So I told him, well, I think it did. So I told him, he said, well, I'd like to hear it. I said, well, I'll tell you on one circumstance, that you believe what I'm telling you. He said, okay, I'll believe whatever you tell me. So I told him, and he said, the angel said my foot's going to be all right. Well, he said, now that's the hard part. He said, I came here to take you up to surgery. But he said, if an angel told you that, who am I to reverse the edict of an angel? See? He said, I don't have any explanation to what's going to happen to your foot. But he said, you won't go to surgery anyway. Take my word, you won't go to surgery. So he came back in a couple hours with about 15 other people with him, including the other 3 doctors that were kind of worked on my case to begin with, nurses, and he said, now you have to tell us your story. So I told him the story. The fact remains is I started getting better, see, and gaining some strength and everything. And
Thankfully, Frank recovered and became a medical doctor himself. He was a unique doctor in that he wanted to help people find natural therapies for their ailments, and many people came to him for help. As we look back on his life, we praise the Lord for leading him so wonderfully in his journey. Well, we're coming to the end of the program, but I wanted to sneak in 2 more stories for you. And these stories come from a friend of ours named Mary, and Mary lives along the coast. And Mary loves to talk to people about Jesus. You might see her in a store, and she'll talk to you about Jesus. Maybe at the post office, she'll talk to you about Jesus. She also loves praying to her Lord. And she shared a couple stories with us that I want to share with you right now. The first one is entitled, The Sunken Wrench and a Prayer. And this is what happened to Mary. Throughout my life, she says, the Lord has given me divine appointments. One time back when I was with my first husband and we did commercial fishing together, on this particular day I was carrying our food supplies to the boat. And in preparation for our 3 to 4 days out to sea, and I saw an elderly fisherman named Jack standing on the edge of the dock, holding a line with a magnet on the end of it. Jack had the distinction of being a one-armed man. He was standing near his boat, and I asked him what he was up to, and he told me that he had accidentally dropped his wrench into the bay, and he was trying to fish it out using a magnet and some cord. He had been throwing in the line and pulling it out for most of the afternoon and hadn't had a bit of luck. He was getting tired, and I told him that I'd be right back after I finished taking my supplies to my boat. When I returned, I said, Jack, let me try that. and he handed me the magnet, and as I stood on the edge of the dock, I prayed to the Lord that he would help me retrieve the wrench for my friend. I tossed the magnet into the water with a splash, and I saw the line flow through my hands as the magnet went deeper and deeper into the dark waters of the bay. A moment later, there was a clunk, and as the magnet attached itself to something metal, I drew out the line, and what do you suppose was on the end? Yes, it was the missing wrench, and Jack was shocked. "You got that on your first try," he said. I told him, "I just prayed." Trust me, every fisherman on the dock heard what happened. Isn't God wonderful? Well, of course, that's not the only prayer story that Mary has for us. The second one she wanted to share goes like this. On Friday, after using my big freezer, I locked it and I set the key somewhere instead of putting it back where it belonged. I then went back to getting things ready for Sabbath. I go through the weekend and then Monday rolls around and I needed something out of the freezer. I went up to it and it was locked. So I went to where the key is always kept and the key wasn't there. I panicked and I sent up a prayer saying, "Father, where is that key? I need it before Wednesday, as I'm getting a lot of blueberries and Marion berries. And Father, I need that door unlocked." I just couldn't imagine where I would be able to put that many berries without the freezer. So this morning as I was praying, I asked again, "Father, if I can't find the key before Wednesday, could you please have an angel open it for me?" I went out to the utility room, walked up to the freezer, grabbed the handle, and it opened. My heart leapt for joy. I went to my bedroom and knelt down and praised the Lord for answering my prayer. Perhaps you have a story too that you'd like to share with us. Visit us on our webpage at blbn.org. That's blbn.org. And you can send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And friends, as we come to the end of this program, I want to remind you, give your heart to God, do what he says, and you too can have your very own story of faith.